Like I've said many times in the past, I love Persona 5. In fact, I love it so much that the game's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable. But you know what, as creepy as that sounds, I apologize for nothing, because as far as my tastes are concerned, just about everything to do with this game's perfect. And given that the game was popular enough to warrant the main character joining the Smash Bros. Roster, I'd say that I'm not alone in feeling this way. And now the Joker's a part of one of Nintendo's most popular franchises, with all kinds of buzz surrounding the game he came from, millions of Switch owners who've never heard of Persona before are curious to try the main game out. However, despite the huge potential for growth, Atlus is still yet to allow Persona 5 to step outside of the PlayStation's yard, and once the updated version of the game Persona 5 Royal was announced as a PlayStation exclusive after Smash Bros., many Switch owners gave up hope that a port would ever happen, and for whatever reason, Sony stands celebrated the fact that a series they claim to love wouldn't have a chance to be played by more people. However, even though Atlus said somewhat recently that they don't have plans for the Persona series to go multiplat, I'm still doubling down that it's only a matter of time before it happens, and seeing as how my last Persona video reached 1 like, I'm gonna keep my promise and elaborate more on why that is. So pour yourself a glass of non-alcoholic bull milk, sit back in your dad's forbidden chair, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, America's next top proctologist Cameron all one word, to tell you why there's no way Persona 5 isn't coming to Nintendo consoles at some point. That's right, I really am gonna be as bold as to say that there's no way the Persona series isn't gonna go multiplat, because the only sign pointing to it not happening is simply the fact that it hasn't happened just yet. And yeah, I know I already pretty much made the same video about a year ago, and I've even doubled down on my claims in a few videos after that here and there, but so much regarding this topic's changed since then that I really felt like I needed to make an updated version with all the new info that's come out. So basically, just think of this video as the royal version of the video I made a year ago minus the full retail price. But anyway, I already know that some people are going to be furious over this video because I think the Persona being exclusive to Sony's always been out of loyalty or something like that, but I firmly believe that it's always been a matter of Sony just having the best platforms for Personas 1 through 4. Prior to that console generation, most Atlus games had always been exclusive to Nintendo consoles because it was always the best platform for the genre. But you know what other RPGs were exclusive to Nintendo consoles? That's right, Square games, most notably the Final Fantasy series, until Sony started using discs instead of cartridges, and if Final Fantasy jumped ship from Nintendo, then obviously everybody else was gonna do the same. And yeah, the GameCube fared a little bit better with RPGs, I guess, but even then, the smaller discs were still a pain in the ass for developers to load up with pre-rendered cutscenes. Plus, there were also way fewer GameCubes in people's homes than there were 64s, and more PS2s than there were PS1s. Not to mention that the GameCube was just about dead in 2006, so it would have been a huge waste of effort to put Persona 3 out on anything but the PS2. True, the Nintendo Wii was tearing ass around the backyard when Persona 4 was released, but I'm sure Atlus had no idea how big that console was going to be when they started making that game, even though they did support the Wii from the very beginning. And even if Atlus did know, the PS2 still had over 100 million units sold, and RPG fans weren't necessarily flocking to the Wii or anything like that. So Persona 4 wasn't even on the PS3, then it makes sense that the series wouldn't jump ship to the Wii of all things. There were also a lot of mainline handheld Persona games on the PSP and Vita, but while Nintendo's handhelds have always had a higher install base than Sony's, you've got to remember that these games came out during an era where a system's power made a difference in how games actually played as opposed to how pretty they looked. And besides, even though the PSP wasn't as successful as the original DS was, it was still a big enough hit in its own right to justify the first two Persona games being exclusives, and the extra power made it the platform of choice to bring an upgraded PS2 game like Persona 3 Portable to. And the same could be said for Persona 4 Golden being on the Vita over the 3DS, especially when the 3DS had such a rough start. I mean, back then, pretty much everybody thought the Vita was gonna whoop the 3DS's ass, so it wouldn't surprise me if Atlus thought the same thing. But what did Atlus do when it became abundantly clear that the 3DS was the place to be? That's right, they said frig Sony and made the Nintendo exclusive Persona Q games. Sure, they might not be mainline games, but they prove that Persona's not locked to Sony or anything like that, just like Shin Megami Tensei, Final Fantasy, Mega Man, and so many other franchises were never locked to Nintendo. But even though the 3DS was the place to be for pretty much any handheld game in general, the PS3 was still by far the most obvious choice for any home console game at the time Persona 5 started development. Even though I'm sure the Wii must have been tempting for Atlus to consider since it only had about 90 million fewer consoles in people's homes than the PS3 did, or even the Xbox One with its whopping 23 consoles in Japan including display models. However, fast forward a few years later, and the home console landscape's very different with the Switch tearing ass around the backyard, and unlike the Wii, it's actually appealing to avid gamers as opposed to just soccer moms making impulse buys, which means that for the first time ever, there's finally another viable platform besides PlayStation where a mainline Persona game would fit in, and there's no way in hell that Atlus doesn't realize this, which is probably why they put Persona 5 Scramble on the console. Like I said in my last video, Scramble's a terrible idea for testing the waters of Persona 5 coming to the Switch, since sequels only appeal to people who played the original game, which is why the PS4 version outsold the Switch version in Japan. And even though Scramble's pretty fun, the gameplay is completely different from what hooked people into the mainline series. However, I think that game coming to the Switch had less to do with gauging interest and more to do with the developers already having experience with the console, making the port relatively easy to do. If nothing else, Persona 5 Scramble on the Switch is basically just the portable version of the game that you happen to be able to play on your TV as well. And if there's one thing Atlus loves, and it's making games for portable consoles, hence why Shin Megami Tensei 5 was confirmed before the Switch was cool. So now that the Switch is killing it as a home console, as well as being the only competent portable left, that's all the more reason to bring the mainline Persona series over as well. Like I said, Royal being on the Switch after Joker joining Smash was the nail in the coffin for a lot of people, but I'd imagine that Royal was in development long before Nintendo and Atlus worked the Smash deal out, and probably before the base Persona 5 even came out on the PS3 and 4. And in case you already forgot, that was during the time when the Wii U was staining Nintendo's carpet. So even if Royal was never legally locked to the PS4 or anything like that, I'm sure Atlus would still need a little bit of time to rework things to get the game running on the Switch, even though the console's completely capable of running the game, judging by the fact that standard Persona 5 was made for the PS3 and that Scramble looks just as good on the Switch as Royal does on the PS4. For some reason, I feel like a few people are gonna get pissed to hear me say something like that, but just look at these two games and try to tell me that one of them looks considerably better than the other. And even if Persona 5 is legally locked to the PS4 right now, it can only be as a timed exclusive, and seeing as how classic Final Fantasy VII's on a Nintendo platform, then hell must have already frozen over a long time ago, so Persona 5 shouldn't be out of the question. And even if it can't happen for a while, like I said, Atlus would probably need a little bit of time to rework some stuff anyway, like the button commands during the battle screen not looking nearly as cool on the Switch. However, even that's hardly an issue that'd be a deal breaker for a lot of people, and even if it is, they could still at least make an optional Persona 5 controller or something with different colored buttons. Regardless though, the fact that the Persona Q games are already on the 3DS, along with Persona 5 Scramble being on the Switch, not to mention Joker being in Smash Ultimate, should be more than enough solid evidence that mainline Persona games are absolutely capable of coming to Nintendo consoles. And if that's still not enough to convince you, then tell me why on earth Atlus would ever even consider asking fans whether or not they want something they could never deliver. If you were to ask someone at Nintendo about the possibility of seeing something even as obscure as Steel Diver coming to the PS4, they'd immediately shut it down and probably make fun of you for asking just to be a dick. And I'll tell you right now, you certainly wouldn't see any spin-offs or even cameos on other platforms either. I mean, Nintendo even threatened to TP Sony's house over user-created Nintendo stages and Dreams. Granted, Nintendo's been known to be dicks from time to time, but my point is that if Sony really did own Persona, then they certainly wouldn't allow spin-offs like Persona Q to branch out as Nintendo exclusives. However, not only is Atlus straight up asking people if they want to see Persona 5 on the Nintendo Switch, but when an Atlus representative was recently asked about this, she straight up said that it was possible and that fans basically need to keep begging for it. In fact, she even went as far as to say that she's personally fighting for it to happen internally. It's basically the same thing as being at a Creed concert or something like that and they ask you if you're ready to rock and roll, which everyone obviously cheers for, but no matter how loud the crowd gets, the singer always lies and acts like they didn't hear everybody and asks them to cheer again louder. Obviously, if the second cheer's not louder than the first, the band's not gonna just walk off the stage or anything like that, but they still ask anyway for some reason. And I really do think that that's pretty much what Atlus is doing right now. I mean, you'd never see a singer get on stage and ask everyone if they're ready to rock and roll, and no matter how loud the crowd gets, he just turns around and says, "Oh, well, we're actually not able to rock and roll. We were just wondering if you guys wanted us to, is all." So with all this evidence, there's absolutely no way in hell that anyone can deny that Persona 5 coming to the Switch is entirely possible. And since it is possible, then Atlus would have to be absolute morons to not make it happen, because with all the interest and awareness Nintendo fans have towards the Persona series thanks to Joker's appearance in Smash and the general hype surrounding the 5th game, they'd be leaving assloads of money on the table for no reason in the world other than to be loyal to Sony. But again, if Atlus really is loyal to Sony with Persona, then they sure do have a funny way of showing it. And if you're one of those people who gets pissed whenever someone says they want Persona 5 on the Nintendo Switch, then tell me why in the comments, because I honestly can't figure out why anyone who doesn't work for Sony would feel this way. I mean, I don't have any problem playing Royal on my PS4 whatsoever, but since I love it so much, I want as many people to experience it as possible. It's not a matter of me loving Nintendo so much that I want to take one of Sony's exclusives away. I just love Persona and want other people to be able to enjoy it if they want to. And even beyond that, the more successful the series becomes, and the more resources Atlus will have to work with for future games as well. I get that the idea is to make fans want to buy a PlayStation just to play the game, but unless Sony's paying them assloads of money, I think Atlus would be stupid to care about how many PS4s are sold at all, because while Persona 5 definitely sold some consoles, I doubt that Atlus wouldn't make far more money by going multiplat than whatever Sony could possibly pay them. And for the record, yes, that means that I would have absolutely no problem with Shin Megami Tensei 5 or any other Switch exclusive being on the PlayStation either, because I don't have any stake whatsoever in Nintendo or Sony's market share. As long as both companies are healthy and the games I like are performing well enough to get sequels, then I don't really care who has the edge, and neither should you. The only people who should worry about stuff like that are the companies themselves. But honestly, even if you do work for Sony, you should still want Persona 5 to come to the Switch anyway once Royal's lifetime sales settle in, because a Switch port would only create new fans for the series, which could really do a lot for the seemingly inevitable Persona 6 on the PS5, even if it were just a timed exclusive as much as I hate those. I mean, the people who don't buy a PlayStation to play Royal after about a year of a Switch port being unconfirmed will probably never end up buying one anyway, so at that point, you might as well just let Atlus make some more money from Switch owners, just like how Microsoft decided to make some extra software sales off of Cuphead since it was probably never gonna sell another Xbox anyway. Obviously, I'm not saying that Sony should make God of War multiplat or anything like that, and I know that Persona is definitely a bigger deal than Cuphead, but I still think it'd even be in Sony's best interest to let the Persona series take advantage of an opportunity to grow even bigger. So really, no matter how you look at it, there's absolutely no reason why Persona 5 shouldn't come to the Nintendo Switch, or at the very least, whatever its successor is gonna be, and I just can't fathom that Atlus doesn't realize this, especially now that Nintendo's BFF Sega owns them. And as for why Atlus won't just come out and confirm Persona 5 on the Switch, though, there could be some kind of legal reason why they can't, but that's never stopped timed exclusives from making it clear right out of the gate that they're gonna go multiplat eventually, so I really don't think that's it. And like I said earlier, Persona 5 was originally a PS3 game, and based on my first 45 hours of Royal, I don't see any differences in the visuals that make a Switch port any more difficult. Although, to be honest, the file size would probably be a pain in the ass given how expensive the higher-end Switch cartridges could be. If I had to guess why Atlus hasn't confirmed it yet, though, then I'd say it's probably because it's much more important to focus on finishing and promoting Shin Megami Tensei 5 first, since you wouldn't want to port a Persona 5 hogging any of the spotlight. And even beyond that, they'd probably want Persona fans to believe that supporting Shin Megami Tensei 5 would help bring the Persona series over to Nintendo, because obviously that'd grow the Shin Megami Tensei series as well, which is funny to think about since Persona's actually a spin-off of that series, but it's somehow more popular. And when I say Persona fans, I'm also including curious people who've never played any of the games before. If Atlus already knows that they're not going to bring Persona 5 over to the Switch, then they'd be absolute morons to not shut the rumors down as soon as possible, rather than let the inevitable disappointment keep growing. And if they already know that they are going to port it over, then the smartest thing to do would be to allow the fanbase to keep believing that it's some kind of forbidden fruit and wait to announce it till it's as close to a release date as possible. That way the hype of a confirmation would have less time to die down. And lastly, if Atlus really does lack confidence in a Switch port for Persona 5 and they really don't think that there's hype that could die down in the first place, then the perfect test would be to bring HD remasters for Personas 3 and 4 over. That way everyone would have a chance to get a taste of what the series is all about, rather than a spin-off sequel to Persona 5 that could only appeal to PlayStation owners who already have access to the first game. So seeing as how we haven't seen Switch ports for Personas 3 and 4, and that Atlus is asking fans to scream louder for a Persona 5 Switch port rather than just shutting the rumors down as soon as possible, then the only two possibilities are that Atlus already knows that they're gonna bring Persona 5 over to the Switch or its successor when the time's right, or that they're just plain stupid. And if you ask me, I really don't think it's the latter. But anyway, what do you think about the Persona series coming to the Switch, though? Do you think it's inevitable, or do you think that the Persona series is going to be the only third-party exclusive to leave assloads of money on the table by not going multiplat just for the sake of being loyal to Sony, despite all the spin-offs on rival consoles? Either way, vote in the poll, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But let me tell you, if there's two human beings who I'd love to see get Nintendo Switch ports, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Buffalo from Utah and Noah Linger. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and all kinds of wacky rewards in the mail. And if you want to make cameos, then send pictures or videos of you rocking any FU Game Crew merch doing whatever you want as long as YouTube allows it, like these badasses you see before you. And as always, like and share this video if you want to help this channel grow, and if you want to prove that you're not down with registered sex offenders, then go right ahead and press that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, I'm going to be streaming on Twitch at Cameron All One Word whenever I play games from now on, so feel free to come hang out and heckle me sometime. My name's Cameron All One Word, and I'll be back with more videos soon.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.